a guy had some extra asphalt. He stopped by, he got some extra on his truck and he wants to do some work out back. I said, good. We started off at 2,500. He said, no. I said, no, 2020. We're down to 1,600. So I said, I do it.
Well, we'll know if you disappear for a minute. You're out running one of the rakes.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Hopefully it's one of our guys.
Yeah.
Or girls.
All right, we all back? When you put us back live, we're live. Okay, we're Senate Transportation Committee is back live again, and we're talking to the AGC folks. Matt is with us. Musgrave is with us this morning, and go ahead. It's all yours. We're talking about work safety zones, and last year we had to come up with an idea about the paddles with the lights on them, and we want to make sure we can do the most we can for safety about these folks that are out there directing traffic, and it seems to be a problem, and I don't blame them. They don't slow down for work zones, and so help us understand what's going on, Matt. For the record, who are you and what you do?
Well, for the record, my name is Matt Musgrave. I'm with the Associated General Contractors of Vermont. We're a trade association that represents the road and bridge builders. We also represent commercial construction, and we call it the vertical builders. They do a lot of work with BGS and state buildings, as well as federal buildings, office buildings, and all types of buildings. And we also have a contingent of residential builders as well, and an electrical association that we manage as well. One of the main missions of our association is safety. It's on the front of mind of contractors all day long. The emotional cost of losing someone out in the field is terrible. It far exceeds any other consideration of that loss. Just have to go home at the end of the day, either as a witness or as a manager, supervisor. Sending someone home injured or not at all is terrible. And you probably remember back in last year, before we all went into quarantine, we were having some robust conversations, and AGC approached the State House with a contingent of traffic flaggers to come and direct attention to the death of James Alger, who was a traffic control flagger. This occurred over in New Haven, and we had a number of his peers. We had his partner who brought his child. His mother came in and gave gut-wrenching testimony, and I'm just going to leave it there. We are not going to invite them back in. I wouldn't want to put them through reliving the death of their son. But we have taken this safety within the work zones very seriously, and we're seeking to fix what is a known problem, an apathy for following the speed limit within work zones or other laws, including texting while driving or other distracted functions. So I want to start off by saying in no way am I disparaging law enforcement, the agencies involved, or anything. What we need to do is help them do their jobs, because law enforcement is a major factor within work zones. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I know this is a little scary, but I will share my screen. I just want to share with you really quickly what police officers are allowed to do within work zones. There's actually a section of the Vermont Standards and Specifications for Construction. It's a very large book, which is essentially amendment to any of the contracts that has certain requirements that must be followed, whether they're engineering details or how you would set up your work zone, and how police officers are allowed to be hired within those work zones. And there's really only 3 jobs that the state contract allows a contractor to employ a police officer for. One is that passive enforcement, and that's the first one there. We call that the blue light. They are to stay at the work zone. They're not allowed to leave the work zone. In fact, they're encouraged to be outside of their vehicle and maintain a presence there. So that's their first job. The second job is they can direct traffic. They can help set up cones. The third job is they can also manage that the intersection. So what it doesn't give them the ability to do is see someone that's violating the law, get in their vehicle, chase them down and pull that individual over and assess whether or not a ticket is appropriate. When that officer is not in the car, they're not able to track the speed limit. And I am aware that they are trained in visual speed detection. And quite honestly, it's very clear when someone's driving 50 miles an hour through a 25-mile-an-hour posted zone. And they have the ability, if there was available officers in the area, to phone ahead and call a friend and have someone come enforce. But if you talk to officers that actually work in these zones, particularly when they're on the interstate highway, when that speeder leaves that work zone, they're not doing their 65, 70 anymore. They're now going beyond that. And the effectiveness of getting someone to leave a precinct or another location to enforce that violation is very difficult. So I do want to say thank you to law enforcement for the amount of work that they do put in. It's not their fault that they can only do these particular jobs. And there are exemptions. For example, if a town was to hire a local sheriff's department and it doesn't fall under an AOT contract, they can set their own ideas. So we do have, on occasion, you'll see enforcement through the sheriff's department. But by and large, we know that there is an enforcement. And last year, working with Jake Alaverta before he retired from the DMV, we looked into the actual numbers of work zone violation tickets and cross-referenced it with the amount of traffic that exists. And we used the span of traffic that was between the Colchester and the Milton Islands exit, which had a construction project on the, I think it's Mallett's Creek Bridge is what they call that. And there are two bridges that go opposite directions. And we know from traffic counts that 35 to 40,000 cars travel in both directions every single day. That project went all summer long. It included a number of traffic accidents or collisions. And there were even a couple of deaths that were a result. I understand one of them may be a driver impairment. But there were several engineering changes that took place there to accommodate the accidents that were happening. But speed is constantly a factor, because if you're familiar with that stretch going out of Colchester, you come up over a ridge before you go down to the Mallett's Creek area. Again, if it's not Mallett's Creek, I'm apologizing. But where the pull-off is, where the way station is, when you come up over that next hill to where that work zone was, if you're going 70 miles an hour, you're abruptly stopping because it's a blind corner. But what we were able to find was a complete lack of violations for speeding in the work zone of that particular project. So when you look at 35,000 cars going every single day in opposite directions, it's clear there is not effective enforcement within those locations. And that's what we're here to talk about, is enforcing the law within those speed zones. So when the bill came out, 433 came out of the House, it included a study on these automated traffic law enforcement systems. Originally, AOT had proposed a pilot program to actually use these automated license plate speed variable signs in a pilot program on several projects that would not, in fact, hand out tickets. They would issue a written warning to the owner of the vehicle. And we were very supportive of that, because although we would like to see more strict enforcement, I mean, our preference would be to have uniformed law enforcement out on the streets patrolling these areas. We know that with the shortage of the workforce and police, and that they have a number of other duties that their lack of supply must handle, and we are looking at automation that other states are using. And that's why, we suggested early on the automated license plate readers, because this would give an opportunity, even if it was just a warning at this point during the pilot program, that a driver would go through the zone. If they were speeding, they would be issued a written warning. They would look at that. Of course, the press will notice this, and generally the public would understand that the state of Vermont is taking safety within our work zone seriously, that we're now employing new techniques to try to at least raise awareness, which is essentially what a warning is. It's raising awareness that you broke the law. So we don't support doing another study that is included in H433 that is before you today. We would just as soon come back and discuss this again further to talk about real enforcement because we understand that the study that's been set up is so that we can seek data to find out whether or not the traveling public is speeding through work zones. I'm just going to say we know this already. We don't need to waste any more money, whether it's $250,000 or $1 million, to do another study to find out people's speed and use handheld devices within work zones. We just simply don't need it. We understand the privacy concerns and ownership concerns that the transportation and judiciary committees have shared. In a normal session, we'd have time to sit down, meet, discuss all these different items, the ins and outs, have robust testimony from different stakeholders. And we would have already taken time to point out that, for example, the first thing that you're taught in your driver's ed course is that driving is a privilege. So number two, we already use license plate reading technology when we're issuing parking tickets. So there is a question of whether it's fair to issue a citation or a warning to the owner of a vehicle, because that's all you would have by reading a license plate rather than the operator. But we would be able to address that because we already have a system of parking tickets. We'd also be able to address the privacy concerns revolving around cameras. And they're everywhere in society right now, and states as close as Massachusetts are already replacing toll booth operators with automated license plate reading technology. I personally have paid my toll through the internet because I had my license plate read. So this is the norm in society now, and whether we like it or not, that's the direction that we're going. And
let me stop you right there. The only issue with that now you're talking about a judiciary issue, which has been discussed for years, and it goes down a whole new road, as you know.
Yep.
Because once you open that gate, they've been talking about stop signs, they've been talking about red lights, they've been talking about. So that's another big discussion. I know what you're saying, but I just want to give you a heads up on that. That's not a transportation issue after that.
No, I understand completely.
Yeah, okay.
And I bring it up as a point of reference that this isn't the year that we're going to be able to satisfy all those answers. But we do believe that we believe that we need to have enforcement, because right now we don't believe that the construction community, the flagging community should just try harder to keep work zones safe. I mean, that's, we're dealing with people that are breaking the law. We have engineers that set up the work zones. We have the required PPE. You can see these people. We're testing out these lit paddles. So what we're looking for is a way to cure distracted and impatient driving, and that's through education as well as enforcement of our laws. Like I said, we're not in a normal session, so I'm happy to revisit this and bring a number of folks to come in and testify on this issue, but we're willing to walk away from it for now. But I'd like to ask the committee to consider this testimony, and that right now is probably not the right time to make major non-COVID or must-pass bill decisions when we can't have robust debate. So that's what I have for you today. We appreciate the effort that House Transportation put in. We appreciate the efforts of AOT and DMV, but we're not interested in a study at this point. We're interested in figuring out a solution.
I'm surprised to see the equipment part. It says when operating on a project during nighttime hours. So you're not going to use the lighted paddle, just not during the daytime, just at night?
AOT have put together the pilot program, and I don't know of the specifics. I do believe that they will be testing both to see what the efficacy is.
Yeah, because that's where I saw it a year ago when I brought it up. I saw it during the daytime, and it was lit up. So I'm surprised it's only going to be during the nighttime. What about speed bumps? Has there ever been any call for a speed bump put on both sides of the construction zone? Lay down a speed bump, not put one in concrete, but just lay one down to slow traffic?
I know that AOT addressed this question in the House.
Okay.
There's a number of reasons why that doesn't necessarily work. I mean, particularly if you're looking at let's say interstate speed zone where you would be at 55 miles an hour when you went through, that's not feasible to have speed bumps. And then on some temporary work zones, they are very mobile. So they're moving on a regular basis. So you can imagine laying down asphalt to create.
No, I didn't mean asphalt. I thought there was something that was portable that you could lie down. I've never seen them used, but I just didn't know if that was a possibility.
No, just from the AOT testimony that I saw, they didn't think that it was feasible.
Okay, all right. Okay, question, Senator Chittenden.
So, Matt, if you could refresh my memory, as I stated in previous testimony, I support moving forward with the pilot, but I'm trying to understand how we got to where we are. Did the governor's original plan have the pilot and then the House amended with H433 to soften to a study? All right, well, for whatever it's worth knowing, for all the reasons you argued, I fully support this pilot for public safety purposes, to get a handle on this technology and to start to upskill and get VTrans to be to see what it can do, and also identify the concerns. Maybe if anything, this will prove out and validate those concerns, but this seems like the right reason to commit those resources. I don't know how that translates to moving a pilot forward this session, but I would fully support that.
Last year, Senator Chittenden, I brought it up. I saw a paddle that was lit up and got your attention, circled. And I brought it to the attention. I said, well, how come we don't use it? I saw it somewhere. And that started the discussion about maybe that lighted paddle would help. Not that's going to solve all the problems, but you can see it better than a stationary one, because you come up to a work zone, you see all kinds of signs. But the lighted paddle, and it kept revolving around, it got my attention. And so when I brought it up, they thought they'd look into it, but I just, I'm just seeing how far it goes. That's all. That's one of the issues.
Yeah, I think that's a tool for the toolbox.
Yeah, right. It's not the answer to everything, but it's one more item that it got my attention when I saw it, how it drew my attention, and work zones have been always an issue with us. What can we do better? So the House language is what is you're agreeing with or disagreeing with, or?
So the governor proposed an actual system, a pilot, let me rephrase that. The Agency of Transportation proposed in the original draft that it would include the pilot program that would read license plates, that would issue a warning letter to the owner of the vehicle. And that we do support. We don't support spending money on another study.
Okay, right. Okay. Is Michelle, are you here today, or who's someone from the agency?
Senator Miles, I have a question.
Yes, Senator Perchlik, go ahead.
Mr. Musgrave, it's not just another study, because they're not studying public safety. They're studying how to implement the pilot study, or how to implement it. So I don't see it the same way as, just another study about, how we can have work zones safer. It's specifically to deal with the issues that have come up, like in judiciary. So it seems, I'm just a little puzzled about why you would be opposed to a study that's going to answer the questions that need to be answered to get the thing to pass. That's what I'm not clear. It seems like it would give us a leg up next year, because I'm supportive of it. I would be okay with the pilot. So I don't understand why you'd be opposed to this study that's specifically looking at how do we get the pilot going, or a program going.
Well, let me rephrase myself. So I'm not saying that we oppose this in terms of this absolutely shouldn't happen, we don't want this study. What I'm saying is we already know what the study is going to bring. I mean, we have been studying this internally here. We have been working with data from AOT. And my understanding of the study was to be using some of these signs to track real speeds that are occurring within these work zones. And we know that these speeds are being exceeded. We know that this is happening. And we also know that there is not a lot of tickets being written. So that's where I say, if you want to do the study, go ahead. But I don't know that we're going to find some new answer, because the real crux of the matter that we understand is, does the legislature have the appetite to use automated license plate systems to issue warnings? That's the question. It's not whether or not there is speeding. It's whether or not we want to enforce our work zones.
Right. And the study doesn't look at whether they're speeding in work zones. That's not listed. I don't read it in the language anywhere. It's really like, how are we going to store these images? What's going to be the cost? What are the implementation things that AOT is going to need to make it work? So that's why I think the study is going to be helpful if your goal is to get a pilot or a program, because it's not talking about is there speeding or is it a problem or what can we do about speeding. It's specifically how do we implement some kind of automated camera program.
Okay, I would say,
Yep.
absolutely may have misunderstood part of that. But we do already within DMV have policy with dealing with license plate reading technology. So I think Michelle Boomhauer may have an answer on that.
I definitely want to hear from Michelle, but if I may, to Senator Perchlik's comment, I would just think a pilot would answer those questions, and it would also practically, it's a pilot. It's not a commitment, right? Maybe pilot means something different in state government, but for me, a pilot is to answer those questions with practical application of what I would argue is now mature technology with the potential safety benefit. But I'll stop talking because I really want to hear what Michelle has to say.
Thank you, Senator Chittenden and Senator Mazza. So the proposal the agency put forward in the House to begin with was basically a two-phase pilot effort, which would first stand up the, research and then understand how we're going to operationalize the in-the-field pilot, and then actually undertake the in-the-field pilot. Okay, and so we envisioned this as being about a 2-year process that would encompass all of the things that are outlined in the House version of the bill in terms of the details that we need to better understand, not only from a technology standpoint, but also from a cost perspective and an operational perspective, I'm sorry. And then it would actually go in the field and test this technology so that we could, and do it in a manner where we're not issuing tickets, we're issuing warnings, and we are, understanding public reaction, all of the elements that would go along with understanding whether or not Vermont wants to move into a phase of actually issuing tickets for this type of behavior. And so the House basically said, we would like to have you first come back and tell us how you're going to do it, and then we'll let you know if we're going to authorize you to do the pilot. So that's where we stand.
Okay. Questions?
I have a question.
Yep, go right ahead. Yep.
I guess it's an obvious question. Michelle, you still, the administration still supports their original proposal. Like they didn't change their mind based on the discussions in the House.
No, I thought that the discussion in the House, both in House Judiciary and House Transportation, illuminated the matters which were really important to members, and those were clearly articulated and obviously will become part of our analysis and our efforts. But I still believe that, there's these technologies are mature enough and there are enough examples in other states for the agency to move forward with our proposal as originally stated.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
And was this language a combination of House Transportation and Judiciary, or one or the other added the language in?
I believe that all of the language came from House Transportation, but I'd have to go back and look at that.
Okay, that's okay. Not that important. Just was wondering. And I did see in here that we specifically mentioned that you'll be working with the Associated General Contractors, and which I'm fine with, but I just wondered, it seemed like we often don't name groups like that in study. Like we would say something, which I'm okay either way, but it seems like often we'd say something like, with a trade association working with, folks in the construction trades or something like that. But just a note, maybe I'll ask Anthea about that.
Yeah, I think Associated General Contractors is really the only trade organization that we work with in terms of transportation construction projects. So I think that may be why they were listed specifically.
Right. It's like we used to do stuff specifically for IBM, but we never mentioned it was IBM. We would say a large microchip manufacturer in Vermont that employs over 1,000 people, or something like that. So it's obviously who it was, but that's the only reason I bring it up.
Okay, I think we got the issue before us, and we can discuss it later. Any other questions at this point? Yes, Senator Chittenden.
The last thing I'll say is, Michelle, could you answer this question? We could, if we wanted to, ask police officers, state troopers, whoever's assigned to a workstation to stand there with a radar detector, catch the speed, and then ask them and the license plate with their own camera or them jotting it down. And then we could manually send out warning letters. So if anything, we have the capabilities now to actually perform this. But what we're really talking about is, do we want to apply a technology available today to efficiently increase the safety of work zones? Is that a fair way to characterize how this could be done without the technology? And so the technology is sort of ancillary to the discussion.
But in your discussion, you're also asking that there be a authorized trooper or someone at the scene, and most generally they're not.
I thought they had sheriffs. Isn't there a sheriff on scene
Not
sometimes?
always. I mean, there are many construction zones, I believe. Is that right, Matt? That they're they're not always law enforcement officers at the scene.
It's generally either a trooper, a local, or a sheriff.
Oh, there always someone with official title there? Oh,
We see them stationed there.
okay.
At least I don't know.
To answer Senator Chittenden's question, I'm not a law enforcement expert, so I'm not going to respond to, sort of the current ability of us to issue tickets based on photo generated radar without stopping the vehicle. But that's certainly something to consider.
Okay. All right. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, thank you very much, Matt. We'll continue our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Earl.
Okay. We are going to move on next. We have Darren Springer. We have a whole group of folks. Let's see, we have Green Mountain Power. We have Government Member Relationships, BSPPSA. So we have, what's our next subject? Who wants to take the lead on the next subject? Darren, are you with us?
I am. Good morning.
Okay. Good morning. Okay, you're up next, and why don't you tell us for the record what the request is, and what would you like to do?
Well, thanks very much. Good morning, Senators. Thanks for having me. Darren Springer, General Manager with Burlington Electric Department. If it works for the committee, I'd love to share screen just for a few moments and walk through a few slides.
Sure, go right ahead. It's all yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, this should start here in just a moment. Wanted to just start very, very briefly. I know we have a few new members of the committee since I've last been in to testify a little about Burlington Electric. We are largest municipal utility in the state of Vermont, third largest electric utility overall. We have over 21,000 customers, relatively unique in Vermont. We have 60% of our residential customers are renters, so we have a significant amount of turnover in those accounts. We operate the McNeil plant, which is the largest energy producer in the state of Vermont. We're 100% renewable since 2014 and haven't raised rates now for 12 years since 2009. So that's just a brief kind of overview of Burlington Electric. We're also working with the city of Burlington towards a very ambitious net zero energy goal by 2030, which is similar to the state's comprehensive energy plan goal, but on an even more accelerated timeframe, focused on the transportation sector and the thermal sector emissions in Burlington. These are kind of the highlights of some of our different incentive programs that are available under Tier 3 of Vermont's Renewable Energy Standard. We're also an energy efficiency utility, so just like Efficiency Vermont is for the rest of the state, we provide that service in Burlington. As you can see here, in addition to things like heat pumps and electric lawnmowers and electric leaf blowers and different technologies. We have a significant focus on electric vehicles. We have rebates for electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids with enhanced rebates for our low and moderate income customers. We also offer a pre-owned electric vehicle rebate. We provide a special off-peak charging rate, which I'll touch on a little more in a moment, and an incentive to help get customers a level 2 charger to participate in that rate. We offer financing with 3 different credit unions for electric vehicles. We now have 16 public charging stations in the city of Burlington with 29 ports that we have invested in or partnered on and operate with the different locations around the city. And just for the committee's benefit, we're certainly a fan of all different modes of transportation. We have e-bike rebates and electric bus incentives as well. We were proud to see 2 new electric buses join the Green Mountain Transit fleet with our incentives in 2020, a little over a year ago. These are just some of the different transportation sector projects that we are working on in Burlington. In particular, we're working with CarShare Vermont to try to expand access to electric vehicles for folks who may not have a vehicle or may not be able to afford an electric vehicle. We've added charging stations now, 14 of them at rental and multifamily properties around the city of Burlington to try to make charging more accessible for residents of those buildings and the public. And we are interested in adding some additional charging capacity. We even, very exciting and with state support, we're going to be bringing an electric bucket truck to our line crew in fiscal year 22. I met with our line workers yesterday outdoors at a social distance for the first time in a long while. And we were talking a little bit about that. I think we're one of 3 utilities in Vermont that's going to be bringing a new electric bucket truck. We're going to be some of the first utilities in the country, I think, on that front. This kind of goes to a little bit of the heart of what I wanted to speak with you all today. This is an adoption curve looking at the total number of electric vehicles that we have registered in Burlington, which is the top line. And then the line below is the number of customers that are on our electric vehicle rate. We were the first utility to offer an electric vehicle rate in Vermont. And currently customers who sign up for the rate can charge, they can set their vehicle to charge between the hours of 10 at night and noon the next day. There's no penalty if they violate that. They just go back to the regular residential tail block rate for those hours that they were charging during that month. Each month they have an opportunity to earn a bill credit if they charge only during those off-peak hours, and it makes charging the equivalent of about 60 cents per gallon of gas for their electric or plug-in vehicle. But as you can see, the number of customers who are taking advantage of the rate is far lower than the number of customers that we have using electric vehicles. Here's just some kind of financials on that. If you're signed up for our EV rate, you're getting on average about $150 of savings relative to the regular residential rate. We know that the chargers cost around $600 to purchase, depending on your electric panel and the complexity of doing the installation. The install can run, here we have just a 500 and a 1200 case, but certainly it can run in different directions there. And then we do provide a $400 rebate for purchasers or people who are leasing a new electric vehicle. So the payback on the charger investment, if you want to be on our rate, is going to be somewhere between about 5 to 12 years, depending on if we're able to get that rebate from us or not. So it's not a bad investment. We certainly encourage it, but it's not a slam dunk yet either, I think, for folks. And we do continue to have the vast majority of customers in Burlington charging using either a level 1 charger at home or a level 2 charger that we don't have on our off-peak rate. And I'll talk a little more about that in a moment. We had 2 specific items that we wanted to just bring to the consideration of the committee. This is in H433. There's some exemption language in section 21D that's listed here. What we wanted to propose for consideration is that currently the language basically says that utilities who have an electric vehicle rate, like Burlington Electric, are exempt from subsection B of this proposed legislation. for the relevant rate classes or market segments in which their rate is offered. We would very much like to add something to clarify that if we were to modify our rate in the future, expand it or update it, that would also be exempt from the requirements of this section. The reason for that is we've done quite a bit of work with our customers and with our rate design to get a structure that makes sense for Burlington. And this, my understanding of this language is it's really intended to encourage utilities that maybe haven't offered an electric vehicle rate yet to do so by a date certain. We certainly understand that, but we would like the ability to be able to modify our rate without having to potentially run it through all the different criteria that are going to be included here and that were not in place at the time when we designed our rate initially. So that was one piece that we wanted to bring forward, and I have one more slide, which is this one here. I know we've had conversations in the committee during my testimony previously about charging fees and how do we capture funding for infrastructure from EV and plug-in drivers. In Burlington, from that graph I just showed, we have 390 registered EVs and plug-in hybrids as of March, so pretty current data. We have a total of 22,742 vehicles, so we're at about 1.7% of the total being either electric or plug-in, which is far, far below the pace of adoption that we're looking at to meet our transportation goals. I know overall in Vermont, it's a fairly similar story. You know, around 1% of vehicles registered and maybe 5 to 7% of new sales registrations are electric. We certainly would be concerned about assessing any kind of a per kilowatt hour fee at the residential level or the workplace level, because we don't have the ability to apply that uniformly to all of our customers. The only customers we could reasonably apply it to with current technology would be the 13% of our drivers who are signed up for our residential off-peak rate. And the irony there, of course, is that they're the ones who are doing something to help move their charging off-peak, which reduces costs for all customers. And those would be the customers who would be subject to those fees. If somebody's charging with a level 1, just a regular outlet, or even if they have a level 2 that's not signed up for our rate, we have no data on their charging use. So we would have no ability to assess a fee. And so avoidance would be quite high. And we've certainly advocated in the committee previously, and I just wanted to reiterate today that if there is an opportunity to look at per kilowatt hour fees, as I understand VTrans is interested in doing on public tariff charging stations, we think that can be a workable solution potentially. We would be interested in that. It would capture out-of-state drivers who use our public stations as well as in-state drivers who use the public stations. And then that potentially could be combined with a annual fee on registrations for all plug-in drivers as a potential mechanism to capture infrastructure fees in a way that would be much more uniform and fairly applied across the different EV drivers. So appreciate very much the committee's allowing me to share screen here. I will stop doing so and welcome any questions that I could answer.
Questions?
Senator Mazza.
Yes, go right ahead.
Mr. Springer, you had mentioned that you have the ability, once they sign up, to assess a lower fee. So you're aware of when they're charging and how much they're charging, as you know, how long they're plugged in and all of that through some form of technology?
Yeah, so only for the customers who are on our off-peak rate, we are able to do that. It's a Wi-Fi based approach. So essentially they put in a smart charger with Wi-Fi and connect it so that we can access that data. And then we can confirm that they're charging during off-peak hours. And if they do so for an entire month, we can provide a bill credit at the end of that month to compensate for their charging off-peak. But it's just for that 13% of our drivers who are signed up for that.
Okay, so I was just kind of interesting because it's the second day in a row that I've heard that you guys have the ability, and I've had some utilities that have said to me that they didn't have that ability in any way, shape, or form to do that. So just kind of fleshing out some of the thoughts in my brain about how we can work with you folks to help us collect fees going down the path. So thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just and you know the challenge is we've actually been interested in you know, like I have a plug-in hybrid vehicle, for example. I don't have a special charger for it. I just plug it right into the wall and I charge it right off of a regular outlet. We've been interested for a long time, and can we get a smart Wi-Fi enabled charger that would allow me as a level 1 customer and people like me who are just plugging into the outlet to be able to use this off-peak rate. And we've not been able to identify any technology anywhere in the country. We've actually even worked with a couple of manufacturers to try to test their technology, and there's nothing we're aware of that's UL listed that would allow us to do that for all those folks who are just plugging into the wall.
Well, I think there actually is an app for that, to be honest with you. There's an app for everything. And I think that if we mandated that electric vehicles had an app for that to identify when they're plugged in, what time they're plugged in, and even if somebody didn't have any Wi-Fi, that car eventually throughout the day or travel at any time is going to be able to notify, just like it does with GPS or cell phone signal, that, hey, I was plugged in on Tuesday from 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. So I think that if we could go back to the car manufacturers and say, hey, if you want to sell your vehicles here in Vermont, we need to have an app in your car available to know when you've plugged in. So I think there are technologies to it. I think, again, I applaud BED for taking the initiative to offer a lower rate and to be able to track that type of usage. And I'd like to see some of the other companies get on board with what you're doing already.
Thanks, Senator. Yeah, absolutely. There may be a different conversation with automakers as opposed to utilities in terms of their capabilities. We don't have that capability, but maybe they do.
Yes, Senator Perchlik.
Yeah, thanks. Mr. Springer, have you run the language that you proposed there in E by the department at all? Because I don't know what's all in B's rates, but I do like what the department has proposed for the EV rates that they're talking about. So I wouldn't want to just forever kind of exempt BD's rates from some of the positive things they have in here.
My understanding was in the House during the consideration of this, that the PUC had actually suggested that if a utility was offering a electric vehicle rate, that they might be exempt essentially from these requirements altogether. And that language was not included. There was the language included instead that basically said you're exempt from some section B for the certain rate class that you've provided the rate for. Which I think is slightly a little bit ambiguous in terms of how that works. So we just wanted to propose kind of an alteration to that would make it a little clearer that if you have a rate, that rate, you know, can be modified or updated without having to go back through the whole process. I can certainly share it as well with, you know, we've been in touch certainly with the department around this, but really it was coming out of the House conversation where the PUC had proposed a more blanket exemption. We certainly would have been okay with that, but given that wasn't adopted, we wanted to try to propose something constructive here that might accomplish a little bit more clarity.
Okay, well, I support that. And I think the question is what the modification, how major, like if you're just changing, you know, one number to a slightly bigger number, then you shouldn't have to go through the whole process. But if you're going to make other wholesale changes, I could see why, you know, you might want to look at what the department is suggesting here and make, you know, and have an opportunity for the regulators to weigh in when it's a more major modification, kind of like we do with you know, Section 248 permits.
Yep, I'll be glad to follow up with the department as well.
Okay, any other questions for Darren at this point? Okay, thank you very much, Darren, and we'll stay tuned. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Andrea Cohen, Vermont Electric Co-op.
Good morning. Thank you for
Morning.
having us.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, even if it's on the video screen sometime soon, hopefully. I will share my screen as well. Let me see if I can pull that off. There you go. For those of you who don't know VEC, I just, for a second, I'm flashing our map. We're the second largest utility in Vermont, and we go all the way the northern part of the state, Senator Mazza's territory, down to here in Chittenden County, Senator Chittenden, all the way over to Senator Ingalls and Senator Kitchell. So we're a big part of the
Didn't realize
northern
we
part of
covered that
the
much
state.
territory. That's a lot of territory.
It sure is. It
Wow.
sure is. We have service centers, one in Grand Isle, I'm sure you're aware of, one in Newport, Derby, you know, in the Derby brand new facility, actually, one up in Richford, and then kind of our home bases in Johnson. And that's where our main office is. I will get my slideshow going here. Let's see.
Nice colored trucks.
Yeah, right. Let me see. Why can't I pull up this? Let me start my slideshow. There we go. So start from the beginning. That's always a good place to start. Thank you for the opportunity to come in and discuss section 21 of the T-bill. I'll just start by saying generally, we have no objection to that section. We have one minor tweak, which I can bring up later. But I have a whole bunch of information in these slides. I won't go too in depth on some of the background. Just wanted you to have that. They're up on your website, so you learn more about VEC. Following Darren, it's always a good reminder, you know, Burlington and VEC couldn't be more different in terms of our demographics, our service territory. Things like density in a utility is really a big deal. So things like meters served per mile of line, you know, we couldn't be more different, yet we share a lot of similar goals about energy transformation and trying to put in place cost-effective and meaningful opportunities for our members to have the chance to convert to carbon-free modes of transportation. One of the key principles that motivates VEC outside of, you know, doing our part for climate change is the principle of making sure we're not cost shifting to people that are not in the position to either take advantage of those programs or aren't interested in those programs. So cost effectiveness and choice are a big part of all of our decisions that we make. So I just wanted to share a little information about VEC and the cost effective. One thing I wanted to bring forward early on is this discussion about smart meters, and Senator Ingalls brought that up. You know, what can and can't we actually do currently, and what is the potential going forward? I think we're hearing a lot of misinformation, and it's amazing. People, I think smart meters might have been oversold. They're actually not as smart as you think they are. And so we've been trying to get the word out about that actually what our AMI meters can do is they can tell whether you're using electricity right now. They can help us keep track of how much for billing and whatnot and usage trends. So we can tell you, and as a VEC member, in 15-minute intervals, you know, how much you were using. So when somebody calls us, say with a high bill complaint, they say, why is my bill so high? We can look at their usage over the course of the day, over the course of the week, and we might be able to help them sleuth out what's going on with them. A lot of times there's a pump that's not functioning properly and it's just continuously running, and we could see, you know, or we'll say, did something happen in mid-May? And they're like, oh yeah, I put in a hot tub. We're like, well, that's why your electric bill went up. So that's what we could do. But what they don't do is they don't tell us what you're using the electricity for. That is often has to be a conversation with the members. So if we see a big spike in usage, it could be someone's charging their car, but it could be they're heating a hot tub or using a heat pump or turning on their grow lights, whatever they're doing. So, you know, that I think that's an important starting point to understand that if we wanted to get information about a particular product usage, there needs to be some type of sub-meter used. And that sub-meter will need, if we're going to get into billing or metering that, you know, it's going to need to integrate with our metering and billing systems. Now, none of this is necessarily rocket science, but it is potentially very expensive and very time consuming. And, you know, come back to who should pay for some of these things. So if we want to get there, how fast do we want to get there and who should pay? You know, if we add an additional utility meter, we're going to have to go out, we're going to install it, we're going to have monthly fees for that. If there's a meter embedded in a particular piece of equipment, like an EV, like in a car, we need to be reassured that that meter is billing grade, that meets the standards for being billing grade, and it must integrate into our systems. So there's just, again, it's not necessarily insurmountable, but it is complex and it is expensive. And as we're considering different policy changes, you got to weigh the cost. You know, are you going to spend more than you're going to get back for requiring certain things? So to be continued. I just wanted to share that main point that smart meters aren't as smart as people think they are, and we can talk more about that with the experts on that. I just share. I won't go into.
Go ahead. So, sorry. Go ahead, Senator Persily.
Sorry, Andrea, I just wanted to interrupt that point. And are you saying that a sub-meter is needed because of kind of internet concerns you have in your territory? Because GMP and BD don't use sub-meters. They just use the charging station and the Wi-Fi connection there. So you don't need a sub-meter, but are you saying as an internet issue, you guys?
Yeah, well, it's one or the other, right? So we either need a sub-meter or we need some other metering, right? So it's either our meter or there some other way. And for the option B, yes, it needs to talk to our system. So that's when you get into the communications challenges. Again, not insurmountable, but there's a cost to all that. So broadband, of course, plays into that.
But if you have a customer that has the internet access, you wouldn't need a sub-meter as long as they
correct
have a smart, quote unquote, car charger.
Right, and which we're understanding more and more of those are proving to be billing grade. You know, Weights and Measures would have something to say if we were charging more, then, you know, we have to rely that that's good technology and accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I include a slide. I won't go into too detail. I just want to explain through our energy transformation program. We have a series of incentives for different types of plug-in vehicles. And we do, in fact, have, for those members that take advantage of the Tier 3 program, we do offer them the opportunity to opt into a whole house time of use rate. So in a sense, if you have an EV, you can take advantage of different rates, and I have a different slide on that, to get lower rates when you're charging off peak. So we want to provide that opportunity. If you apply, if you qualify for, if you income qualify for some of the state EV incentives, you'll get an adder from VEC for that. And we also have different incentives for charging, public charging and home charging, level 2 and level 3. Our incentives are different. Every utility has a little different approach. So again, we share a lot of the same goals. The beauty of Tier 3, and I love following Darren, because like BED, how they're tackling their carbon reduction is so different, right, than VEC. We have different challenges, you know, when it comes to EVs. Of course, range anxiety was really a big deal. And, you know, I need a truck and I need to be able to get on my back road. Is very different in rural service territory. So our strategies are a little different, but we're all learning from each other. Just some information for you. This is what our 2020 incentives brought in last year in terms of uptake. Plug-in hybrids. I'm always surprised in VEC territory. We actually always have more all-electric incentives out there than the hybrids, which is counterintuitive to me, but that seems to be consistent year after year. And some information about uptake on our time of use rate and so on. I include a slide for your future reference about what our whole house time of use rate entails, and it's relevant to the bill before you because the House passed version allows for a whole house time of use rate where you don't differentiate what you're using electricity for. It just means if you're doing it at night, it's going to be cheaper. If you're doing it on the weekend, it's going to be cheaper. So this is how it runs. We have 3 tiers. We have off-peak, mid-peak, and on-peak, and you could see when those rates apply if you opt into this rate. A lot of what we're doing around this is very manual right now. So we're learning a lot. It's kind of in a pilot space. And some people are taking advantage of it and charging, you know, making sure they're charging off peak. We also offer an additional monthly incentive if you collaborate with us as a partner and allow us to help utilize your charger where you're not using incentives are meant to, we work together to shave peak and we share the value of that. This I thought was interesting to highlight because so much of this is human behavior. Back in 2020, we're trying to understand what our members want and how do we help them transition to a cleaner power supply use. And we surveyed our members that we know used the incentives, the vehicle incentives. We got 80 folks replied, and they plug in vehicles. These are 80 members who plug in some form or another their vehicles. And we asked them about how are they charging. And this kind of supports what Darren was talking about. More than half of the members in VEC territory that are plugging in are doing level 1 trickle charging. They have not invested in a level 2 charger at home. We found that kind of curious. Why not? That's a really quick and efficient way. Of course, there's a cost involved, and you have to buy, as Darren had on his slide, you have to buy the equipment, you have to install the equipment. So then we were curious, is that because, why aren't they going level 2? And you'll see that almost half said it's just regular outlet is fine. It does the job. And that going to a level 2 is just too expensive right now. So as we're doing our planning, we are not planning that everybody is moving to a level 2 charger. We have, almost half of our members are just trickle charging, and we expect that's going to continue potentially. So that's just something for your and our information for planning purposes that we thought was very interesting. As to the bill overall, I said, we generally like the opt-in options, and we support that in this case. From what we understand, the intention is that we offer a rate and people can choose to opt into that rate, that it's not forced on them. Again, we're really careful. We're not going to offer a rate that's going to cost shift to other members who aren't in the position to take advantage of that rate. I think this bill gives us that flexibility. So overall, our optional time of use rate, we believe meets the criteria in the bill. So we don't necessarily have an objection to the bill. We do recommend that a small tweak, I have to move you because I can't see my own slideshow, I gotta move. That we, a small change that instead of implementing the PEV rate that we offer, I think that just makes it very explicit. This is not a mandate that a member uses this rate, that there's just an opportunity. And just a reminder that as we continue to discuss rate design options, got to consider, the cost involved with the substantial equipment and software investments that are included, and making sure that those opportunities. That's not me, I don't think, but.
Liz, do you want to mute Senator Mazza?
Yeah. I think that's right, Senator Mazza.
Yes, right ahead.
That's okay. Just to make sure that the mandates or anything we're putting out there does not have unintended financial consequences. We're a member-owned cooperative utility. So if we spend money here, we got, it's got to come out through our membership somehow. So if we're very sensitive about unintended financial consequences because we're a nonprofit member-owned utility. So we have to, it all goes back to the member. So that was kind of a quick run through of some of those things. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
No quick question.
Okay, Senator Perchlik, go right ahead.
Did you guys make that proposal for that change in the House?
Yes. I think we didn't get like a no, it just didn't get, I think it was so small that it got lost a little bit.
Yeah, and
A subtle difference.
right, and I think part of the issue might be that that's what we would hope that the PUC would do in approving it. Like you would make the case that some things don't work for your utility and your members, and that would be taken into account there. But we do want to have the utilities implement these so that we can make sure we're using electric vehicles in the best way. And your way to do it so it can help which obviously the EDC would do it if it was helpful on other issues as far as demand management, or can it be used once we get enough electric cars, can we use it to help with Shiai or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, we're okay with you saying we, VC, shall offer make that rate available. What we want to make clear is you as the customer member don't have to do it.
Oh, okay.
It's really about the member's choice.
Okay. But you would have to at least you'd have to.
We offer.
Okay.
So
Kind of what we're doing now.
inherent in an ability to offer, you actually have to put the program together. So you're implementing and offering. You can't offer without anything behind it.
Right. So we offer to you, we say, here's this really attractive time of use rate that we're saying, hey, if you charge your vehicle at night, you're going to save a lot of money. Why don't you set that up to do that? Whether you're even just with it right now at time, a whole house, even, Darren could take advantage of that, right? By you could schedule your car to turn on or whatever. But we don't want to impose that on the customer. If they're just like, nope, I don't want that rate, we're not going to make them do
Have
it.
you asked the department what they thought of that?
This change, we brought it up on the House side, and I believe the discussion was supportive of it, but I don't want to speak for the department. I believe the legislators were, nobody objected that I heard of, but I could check with Mr. Allen about that.
Yeah, if Riley or Mr. Allen are fine with it, then I think that should be a change we make.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, good to see you. Thank you.
Very much. Good overview. Okay. Melissa Bailey, I think, is next.
Hi, good morning. Melissa Bailey, Manager of Government and Member Relations with Vermont Public Power Supply Authority. Thank
Okay, good morning.
you for having me. I also am going to go ahead and share my screen here. Bear with me. Juggling multiple screens here. All right, there you go.
It looks like Madison County down there. Is that the one? No?
Are you able to see that?
Yep.
Solar array. Okay, great. So I'm paused. I believe this is a project up in Morrisville, actually.
Morrisville, okay.
Yeah, it's up there in the mountains. Yep. So diving right in, Vermont Public Power Supply Authority is a joint action agency. We have 11 municipal electric utility members. These are nonprofit entities governed by local decision making, and the VEPSA members are geographically dispersed around the state, as you can see from the map here. Our members are also relatively small. The smallest member serving roughly 700 customers, and our largest.
You don't see the map. I don't see the map.
No.
Unfortunate.
Solar array.
All we see is panels.
There we go.
There we go.
Paused. There we are. Thank you for the heads up. My testimony will make more sense this way. So again, geographically dispersed across the state, 30,000 customers in total are served by the VEPSA member utilities, and those service territories, while they are 11 municipalities, service territories touch on more than 50 towns in Vermont. And diving right into some considerations in Section 21 of the Transportation Bill. There are two stated goals in Section 21, essentially to promote electric vehicles and then ensure that new EV loads are efficiently integrated into the electric system. VEPSA is supportive of these goals. We don't actually view the provisions of Section 21 as necessary to meet the goals. That said, we don't oppose the bill as currently structured. There were some provisions added on the House side that we think provide adequate flexibility. But again, we don't think the provisions in and of themselves are necessary to achieve the goals. Everything that we do as utilities is aimed at delivering electricity that's safe, reliable, affordable, and sustainable, consistent with state policy. And to that end, we're promoting vehicle electrification and also continually evaluating appropriate load management strategies. So utility decision-making already is aimed at minimizing overall costs within the context of state and climate goals, state energy and climate goals, and also avoiding cost shifting among customers, which creates winners and losers. So again, supportive of these goals and their activities that all of the utilities in the state are essentially already undertaking when it proves cost effective to do so. So again, just speaking a little bit about the concerns with the language. Again, all of our decision making takes place under the least cost planning framework. So essentially, once a load management strategy is cost effective for an individual utility, that utility will have the incentive to employ that strategy. This will be different for each utility because each system within the state has unique characteristics, and this was recognized by the PUC in their report to the legislature on EV promotion from 2019. I think a lot of, as consistent with the discussion that's been happening, just frankly, there will be costs to implementing electric vehicle rates, right? We've spoken a little bit about that. There's no way to get around it. There will be software, hardware, labor costs. There will also be savings, right? There will be savings by shifting this load potentially from peak times to off-peak times. And VEPS's overall position is that cost effectiveness should be demonstrated. There should be a requirement that in order for a utility to be mandated to offer a specific there should need to be a demonstration that it is cost effective to do so and that the benefits will exceed those costs. That language is not embedded in this bill as of now. Again, we've had some discussions about metering infrastructure. The VEPSA members do not have advanced metering infrastructure at this point. We are pursuing that, and their deployment may start as early as 2022 for some members, but not all. And again, we do not currently have advanced metering infrastructure. And as Ms. Cohen pointed out, even having advanced metering infrastructure does not provide the ability for a utility to know what end use is using electricity at any specific time. So again, in order to offer an appliance specific rate, which an electric vehicle rate, either need to install an additional utility meter or rely on the charger that is in the vehicle. And I'm sensing a lot of committee skepticism about what meters can and can't do. I do want to clarify that even if you, we've talked about some of the challenges, right, being Wi-Fi accessibility, cell service accessibility. Even if there is cell service, even if there is Wi-Fi to a home, and even if there is a level 2 charger installed, even if all of those criteria are met, the current electric vehicle rates being offered in Vermont aren't available to all chargers. So essentially, you need to have a specific charger. And Mr. Springer noted that in BED, even with Wi-Fi, even with comprehensive cell service, you still need to choose a specific electric vehicle charger in order to integrate with their EV rate. So again, there would be not only the cost of installing either the EV level 2 charger or meter, there's also this added barrier where not all level 2 chargers can participate. And I think that's why we're seeing fairly low participation in these rates so far. And again, VEPSA's preference would be to have these rate design conversations take place in the existing regulatory framework where these kind of more nuanced considerations can be explored. I will just briefly touch on, again, VEPSA is supportive of transportation electrification. We're providing a myriad of programs under the Renewable Energy Standard Tier 3, similar to the other utilities. We're providing upfront rebates to customers that buy electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids. We're providing electric vehicle charging station incentives as well, partnering with VTrans on the state program. Furthermore, coordinating with Efficiency Vermont on upstream activities to raise awareness and raise dealer participation in promoting EVs. And similar to some of the other utilities, looking for custom opportunities to electrify the transportation sector, looking at electric bucket trucks, potentially motorcycles, and looking at vehicle to grid for electric school buses. And finally, several of our members own electric vehicle charging infrastructure as well. This next slide here shows, I'm hoping that's coming up okay, lists the utilities in the state. For the VEPSA members, we have the number of electric vehicle rebates that we've processed under our Tier 3 rebate offering. So that would be since late 2017 is when that offering rolled out. That's 63 rebates to date, and this shows where those rebates have been taken advantage of by customers. You'll also see the electric rate for each utility in the state, and then that translated into the equivalent cost of a gallon of gasoline. And I would be remiss not to clarify here that these specifically for the folks who do have EV rates, Burlington Electric and GMP, these do not include their EV rates. My understanding is that BED's EV rate is about 8 cents a kilowatt hour, which equates to 60 cents a gallon. And GMP's EV rate is 12.9 cents, so considerably lower than what you see here on their tail block rate. Again, our takeaways kind of from this chart are that one, overall EV deployment in our territories has been low to date. That may change, but this is the experience thus far. We don't see a correlation between low electric rates and EV adoption. We don't see the electric rate as being the key consideration or the key factor that motivates a customer to purchase an electric vehicle. All of the information that we have indicates that upfront cost is the biggest barrier, and then there are also considerations around vehicle characteristics and range.
Orleans, 89 cents. Look at that. Wow.
You can charge your EV very, very cheaply in Orleans.
There, we're going to go to Orleans. Look at that.
Yeah, it's one of the lowest rates in the state.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lindenville, 112. Okay.
Yeah.
Was there another question before I?
No, go right ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. And again, we just see that currently electricity is cost competitive with gasoline. That's kind of our takeaway here, even without special rates. So although we don't see EV specific rates as necessary to promote electric vehicles, we do think that they may have a role to play in load management, which has been largely the focus of this conversation. We do acknowledge that load coming from electric vehicles is going to be significant, and there may be a need to shift that load off peak to avoid costs to utilities, which of course then get passed on to ratepayers. And I think it's worth just touching on the rationale for load management. Again, load management shifts load from peak times to off-peak times, and there are kind of dual rationale for that. One being to make sure that your physical system, the poles and wires, can handle the added load, and the second being to minimize regional costs that are attributed based on peak load. And we see load management as a key utility responsibility to minimize those costs to ratepayers. This slide just lays out some of the existing legislative and regulatory requirements around load management. You'll see 30 VSA 8005, which is the statute enabling the renewable energy standard. At that time, legislators had the foresight to include language about mitigating the impacts of electric load growth that we knew we would see from Tier 3. So essentially, there is a requirement to implement best practices for demand management. The PUC carried that mandate through into Rule 4.400, which implements the RES. And the way that works in practice is that each year, as part of our Tier 3 planning efforts, we need to prepare and submit a plan to the Public Utility Commission, and that plan needs to include kind of a discussion of the costs and benefits of different load management strategies and which ones the utility is going to implement, and essentially why and whether that is warranted on a cost-benefit basis. So again, we already have statutory guidance and regulatory requirements to manage load within the existing framework. And just the final point on this slide, load management is a consideration that's not unique to electric vehicles. Of course, this is relevant for all of our electrification activities. Essentially, a kilowatt saved at peak is a kilowatt saved at peak, and that provides value whether it comes from an electric vehicle or from some other end use, such as a heat pump or a heat pump water heater. So this is why VEPSA is supportive of a holistic approach to load management that includes other end uses. And we are supportive of, there was a change to this Section 21 bill language on the House side that makes whole house time of use rates eligible under this provision, and we're supportive of that. This slide is a little bit dry, just included it. Again, this is the statutory framework under which we implement all of our decision-making, least cost integrated planning. So we are constantly mindful of costs. We engage with regulators on a 3-year cycle with a least cost integrated resource plan. The IRP covers a 20-year planning horizon. We look at our load forecasts. We analyze the distribution system infrastructure, and this informs load management strategies. Essentially, this tells the utility whether you're bumping up against the capacity of your system infrastructure and whether load management is going to be necessary. I think I'm almost done here. Again, our recommendations are really aimed at making the legislation consistent with the existing regulatory process, which requires cost effectiveness consideration. I know that probably sounds like a broken record, but everything we do is a balance between costs and benefits, and there will be costs to implementing EV rates. And VEPS's position is that those should be only implemented when the benefits clearly exceed the costs. We think that this should be a discussion that takes place at the Public Utility Commission, and would prefer that the language be changed from shall implement to or shall offer, as was just previously discussed, to shall consider, and really leave that in the PUC's hands to determine when it is cost effective for each utility to implement these rates. We're moving in this direction. We understand load management is necessary, but again, our decision-making doesn't happen typically based on an artificial timeline, but rather on when it is cost effective to do so.
Okay, questions? Yes, Senator Perchlik.
Well, I won't drag the Transportation Committee into regulatory discussion, but I am presenting this section to Finance, so likely Ms. Bailey and the others will do the same presentation to them. So I think basically we'll likely leave it to the Finance Committee that knows a lot more about the utility rate structures and this question about cost effectiveness, and should it be imposed on them, or should that be part of the PUC decision is probably what Finance is going to talk about.
Okay,
Appreciate that. Heads up.
any other question? Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I will stop
Okay.
sharing.
Yes, Jane?
So, in the House, what committee, was it Technology and Energy that took the testimony on this? Because this obviously is not, this is obviously a nexus with transportation, but this gets into utility policy. So did you testify in the House along these lines? And I was just wondering, and I just want to know, in other words, this is second bite at the apple. You've made this argument in the House and they passed the language as we now have it.
Sure, that's right. Yep, the testimony was delivered in the House Energy and Technology Committee. And again, as I alluded to, the Public Utility Commission had, I won't speak for them, I think some of the similar concerns around cost effectiveness, and the language was modified from the initial proposal. So again, the language that allows utilities to seek extensions, that was not in the initial proposal. So I think that's essentially for the PUC and out, where if it really is not cost effective, if it's going to be overly burdensome for a utility and its ratepayers to implement these rates, there is this pathway to seek an extension. So again, we're comfortable with that. We are not opposed to the bill as it stands now. We think that those provisions provide enough flexibility. But overall, we maintain the position that these legislative mandates around rates are not necessary given the robust regulatory structure we have. And the other important change that was made on the House side was to allow whole house time of use rates to be eligible rather than a specific electric vehicle rate. So given those changes that were made on the House side, we're comfortable with where the bill is now.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. We're all set. All right, we'll move on to the last, and that is Green Mountain Power. And okay, we have Graham Turk. Is that it?
Yes, thanks, Chair Mazza. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Go right ahead.
Perfect. Well, nice to meet you all, and thanks for having me today. My name is Graham Turk. I'm an innovation strategist at Green Mountain Power. I think I'll echo a lot of the comments that have already been made by the other utilities. We're generally supportive of the bill and don't have any objections or changes proposed. I think specifically around the EV incentives, we know that EV upfront cost is still the #1 barrier to EV adoption, and we support moving the market around EVs through various measures and programs that we already have today. One is through point of sale EV incentives, where we're working with dealerships to implement those. It's $1,500 for all electric vehicles and $1,000 for plug-in hybrid, as well as incentives for pre-owned vehicles and an adder for low and moderate income customers. We have partnerships with dealerships to also offer manufacturer discounts to GMP customers. Right now, one with Nissan and one with General Motors. We offer a free level 2 charger with the purchase or lease of any electric vehicle. And with that free charger comes the ability to enroll in our discounted EV rate for charging during off-peak hours. I think Mr. Springer had mentioned about 13% of the Burlington Electric customers with EVs are taking advantage of that rate. For GMP, it's about 15% of folks who already have an electric vehicle and are on those rates. We don't have the exact registration numbers of electric vehicles just because we get it from Drive Electric Vermont by county, but it's right around 15%. And we also provide rebates on public and workplace electric vehicle charging stations so that people can have the confidence to charge outside of home, especially if they don't have the ability to charge at home. For instance, in a multifamily apartment, sometimes there's difficulty to do that. And then I just also wanted to hit on that, this is really an exciting time for electric vehicles. I think we're getting really close to a tipping point for electric vehicle adoption. We're seeing more vehicles with all-wheel drive capability, longer battery range, and a chance to save money on the total cost of ownership when factoring in the savings on fuel and maintenance. We still do need a lot of support, and I think there's an opportunity for really strong growth through this bill and others, where we're at a point now where there's an opportunity for many Vermonters to choose an electric vehicle, and that will be more and more true over the next 5 years as we see more models come out. I believe the number is around 40 new affordable electric vehicles slated to come out in the next 5 years, and manufacturers are really on board for some of them the first time. Even a year ago, you might not have seen such strong support for electric vehicles, and now automakers like GM and Volvo are committing to only making EVs within the next 10 to 15 years. So we'll leave it at that. I think the only other piece on the kilowatt hour charge, just to follow up on some of the comments Mr. Springer had made. So right now, we, similarly to Burlington Electric, we do not use a secondary electric meter to implement that rate. We get data from the charger, which is a smart charger, the same one that we provide for free, and it communicates via the home's Wi-Fi or Ethernet. There's two charging types, two charger manufacturers we use today that are compatible for that rate. And there are about, the number I gave before, the 15% of folks who are on that rate. The rest of them, we don't have any visibility into what they're using or the timing of that use. And that might be because they're, like Mr. Springer, plugging into a regular wall outlet, or they might have a charger that's not compatible with our system to be able to collect the billing data and implement that rate. So there are some customers that also might just not choose to install a level 2 charger at all because of the cost, because they own a plug-in hybrid where you can get by pretty reasonably with just a wall outlet to plug in. And in addition, homes that don't have reliable internet connection wouldn't be able to take advantage of that free charger offering that we provide. Unlike public and workplace charging, residential chargers often do not have a cellular modem, so you're relying on the home's internet as the connectivity piece there.
Questions? Yes, Senator Perchlik.
Mr. Turk, did you say that whatever it was, 13, 15%, is that of, those are the customers that have an EV, is that right? Or that took the EV incentive, or what's that percentage of?
Sure. So that is customers who are on our EV rate out of all customers who have an EV within GMP territory. And unlike Burlington, we have some counties that overlap with other districts. And so the exact number we don't get from the DMV, but that's an estimate based on the counties and registration numbers in each of them.
Okay, so it's because you don't know which customers necessarily have electric vehicles, so you're just cross-referencing with the DMV data.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right.
I've been trying to lower my rates in a grocery store for many, many years. Maybe I can plug into an electric car outlet or something, get a lower rate. Can I do something like that?
So today, at least the discounted EV rates, you do need to have that approved charger, and
That's
so I think maybe if
I'm
you
trying
can-
all the time. I'm trying to get my rates down. Okay, anybody else?
Well, so what you need to do is you put your beer in a car, turn on the air conditioner.
There you go. I saw the other day someone was baking cookies in a car. They can bake cookies in a car with the heat of the sun, and they can bake cookies. So, all right. Well, that's been a full morning discussion. Well, I thank you, Mr. Dirk. And any other questions? Thank you very much for coming. Okay,
Thank you, Chair,
committee, I think
thank
that's
you for
all I
everyone.
have for you folks this morning, and we'll see everybody later or tomorrow morning or this afternoon. Thank you very much. Have a good day.